The answer to 1984 is 1776.
Pictures and videos from Egypt flooded the web. On Facebook and Twitter, journalists posted on-the-spot reports. Protesters coordinated their next moves, and citizens of all stripes shared their hopes and fears about this pivotal moment in the history of their country. Millions worldwide answered in real time, "You are not alone, and we are with you." Then the government pulled the plug. Cell phone service was cut off, TV satellite signals were jammed, and internet access was blocked for nearly the entire country.
So this is America.
The government
This
did
is
not
America.
want the
Who are
people
you?
to communicate with each other, and it did not want the press to communicate with the public.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was live on CNN. Hillary Rodham Clinton giving a speech while the federal government moves to openly put in an internet kill switch. And, of course, that's the headline out of USA Today just yesterday, is that the federal government is worrying privacy experts by trying to pass a kill switch law. And there's Hillary up there saying how terrible it was that Hosni Mubarak had the internet shut down for much of a week a few weeks ago. And then Ray McGovern, another illustration of attacks on free speech, stands up, turns his back to Hillary Clinton. They're wearing his Veterans for Peace shirt. And we have photos up at Infowars.com, was bloodied and bruised and did not resist and was drug out by the security guards. Headline, McGovern bloodied and arrested at Clinton speech. He's a retired CIA officer turned political activist. McGovern was a federal employee under 7 U.S. presidents over 27 years, presenting the morning intelligence briefings at the White House for Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush. And, of course, he's also an Army veteran of the Vietnam era. And he writes for consortiumnews.com. Ray, it's funny, you were just on last week, and I talked about seeing, of course, one of the big war criminals at a steakhouse here in Austin, Karl Rove, and we just simply stood up and said we're not going to eat in the room with somebody like Hitler, with a war criminal, and we left. And you talked about how, and many times you've confronted these people. You've confronted Rumsfeld and about the lies about WMDs. Then he lied again and said he didn't, and then you quoted him, and that was one of the more devastating exposés ever done on live TV. But now they're really getting rough with you, almost like this is East Germany or something, right?
Yeah, actually, the East Germans were much more gentle. I'm licking my wounds here, Alex, but thankfully the x-rays have come back and there were no bones broken. A lot of blood. Just sort of, outrage just doesn't do it. I was standing, not saying a word. Sure, my back was to the secretary. The only thing she could see was veteransforpeace.org, if she could, read that small lettering. On the front of my shirt, of course, I had Veterans for Peace. And I just was trying to show the people there at DW and Hillary Clinton that not everyone agrees with the quixotic and immoral policies that she is a prime mover for. She's never known a war that she didn't love, and she keeps threatening Iran for no specific reason other than her devotion, her very sincere and very close devotion to the interest of Israel. So there is a person that is a bad influence on the whole world, and it troubled me deeply to see everybody applauding so generously and sitting down so respectfully. I was not about to do that, so I stood, turned my back, and I was focused just on the back of the room and completely blindsided when that burly, 250-pound guy in a suit, it grabs me from the side, crawling over 4 women who were to my left, and the next thing I know, I'm in the aisle, and it was just, I didn't know who he was. I was in such shock that I forgot the the drill in the Code Pink manual, which says as soon as they do that to you, you scream what you want to scream, and you let the whole world know what you're standing for. I couldn't even do that. I was so shocked until I get toward the back, and then I said, so this is America, huh? This is America. And then it struck me, I didn't know who these guys were. And so I said, well, who are you? And, of course, they never got an answer to that. So it's pretty egregious.
So basically, private goons or secret police, we don't know, tackle you, bloody you all over your body. Photos are up at Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com. Also, Partnership for Civil Justice that originally took and posted the photos. Free speech is so deadly dangerous, even at George Washington University, that if somebody quietly stands up and turns their back, they've got to be punished. Obviously, this was an assault on you, Ray. Breaking this down, walk through, for those that are listening on the radio, again, where you were, the atmosphere, what happened, and what they did to you once they had manhandled you and tackled you and drug you out. Yeah.
Well, the scene was George Washington University, an auditorium there. The indigenous, so to speak, the people who were invited, were incredibly respectful, too respectful to my lights of the secretary. And I stood there for the first couple minutes, and what happened to me I just explained. I was dragged out, and then, they put 2 sets of handcuffs on me, the metal kind that bites into your skin. There's blood all over the back of my pants, my blood. And I was bleeding profusely, so I said, hey, you got some gauze? And they put me in the EMT thing that rolled up and took my vitals, and the next thing I know, I'm discharged, or not discharged, but given over to the D.C. police on charges of what do they call it, disorderly conduct, and I'm taken up to the precinct there and put in this little cell of the size that Bradley Manning occupies, about 10 feet by, maybe 4 feet, and spent the next 3.5 hours there, and let out in the evening, and they said, I'll go home, you got to go to court on this, you disorderly conduct guy. And so I went to the hospital in my neighborhood. They dressed my wounds and took the x-rays, and as far as I know, there are no fractures, and I'm just, bruised and battered. But I tell you, if Americans don't stand up to this kind of treatment, they're not going to be standing up anytime soon for anything.
Well, in my own experience, when George W. Bush had me arrested at a press conference for politely asking a question, and if folks want to see it, just search Alex Jones arrested for asking George W. Bush a question. They twisted my arm so far behind my back. Once I got outside, I wasn't resisting. It's all on video. That I still have a torn rotator cuff, but I don't like surgery, so I've never fixed it. Then in New York, I was arrested for demonstrating peacefully, and they grunted when they put the handcuffs on, and of course it cut my hand with every bit of force. And this is really a form of torture and a form of recrimination. And so they bloody you, you've got cuts all over you, bruises all over you, cuts from the handcuffs. They jump on you, and then you're the one that's disorderly. Instead of just leading you out, they escalate the situation. I hope that you engage in some type of counterclaim or a FOIA request. Did the police get the names of the people that tackled you?
The big brutal guy, and he was the guy that hurt me most, is as yet unknown to us, but there's... You can see his photo there as he drags me out, so I'm told that it won't be too hard to find out who he is and who told him to do what he did. That would be my interest, to find out whose orders he was following.
Probably State Department Security Service. I'll tell you a story. I was at Bilderberg 2008. Obama and Hillary there for their secret meeting. The press didn't know where they were for over a day. When they disappeared, we knew. We saw them go in. And the day before that, I'm at the nearby hotel to cover Bilderberg, and we're there at the bar eating hamburgers and, some of us drinking beer. and these big burly guys come in and start asking if we want to engage in terrorism with them or if we want to attack the State Department with them. They know how to get in. And then later I did identify and see them at the Bilderberg meeting. Once it was shut down, they were State Department Security Services and U.S. Marine Corps. Isn't that a violation of posse comitatus, Ray, to have federal secret police running around trying to provocateur?
Well, if they're active duty military, yes. But, you know, the broader question, Alex, is so it's illegal. So what's your problem? I mean, we do lots of illegal things now for the last decade, and we're the sole remaining superpower of the world, and you just better watch out, because what happened to Alex or what happened to Ray could easily happen to you. That's the message.
Let me ask you this, Ray. Aaron Dykes, a year ago, went to UT, an open event with thousands, with Karl Rove, and they only took written questions. So during the questions, he stood up and, you know, said, what about the Downing Street memo, the White House memo? What about the fact that you guys lied about WMDs? And he didn't resist. They took him out and charged him. I mean, so I guess in America now, if you ask a question, you get beat up or charged or both. I mean, is that a free society, Ray?
Well, it's verging on that. You know, Alex, I can't avoid the opportunity to just read a couple of sentences from Hillary Clinton's speech. It was 3 paragraphs after she watched me be brutalized by those goons, and she shows complete sensitivity to using violence against protesters. This is what she said. What happened is once again using violence against protesters who are seeking basic freedoms. Now, she's talking about Egypt. She's talking about Iran, okay? And then she says, you know, what they do is they stood and they marched. You know, she's reading this thing and it seems to be, or at least pretends to be, completely oblivious of what just happened 4 paragraphs before. The woman is a menace. I mean, you know, whatever she learned at Yale Law School, where she shares the laurels with her husband and with the likes of John Yoo, I mean, it wasn't justice. It may have been some laws or something, but even those laws are sort of applicable only if this privileged class of dignitaries say they're applicable. You know, I do a little aside here. I was reading cables 2 months ago from Tunisia, and there's one from the ambassador talking about this splendid palace that he was treated to dinner at, and it was just really over the top. They had frozen custard flown in from Algeria, and they had a tiger in a cage, just like Saddam Hussein's son used to have. And he reports this, and then at the end he says, you know, the people are suffering, and they don't have enough to eat. Okay, now reverse that and have somebody from Egypt or Algeria or Tunisia reporting from Washington and having attended the wedding of Hillary Rodham Clinton's daughter, okay, in which over $1 million was invested. It would be the same thing, you know. Americans can't find a job.
And you've got one of the sons of the banksters that are robbing us that she's marrying.
Yeah, they fund these weddings and so forth. So, you know, it's just a matter of time. I think Noam Chomsky was on Amy Goodman this morning, and I think he's got it right. They'll do this to us as long as we sit back and say, oh, well, you know, not doing it to me. Do it to those upstarts like McGovern, you know, or like other people like that.
Well, Ray, we're almost... Absolutely. We're almost out of time with you. I want to commend you for what you've done, and others should obviously follow in your example if they have the courage and understand how high the stakes are if we don't start saying no to this open corruption. But not just after they drug you out, right before they drag you out, and we were playing the clip earlier, she's talking about the Egyptians standing up, getting involved, the internet, and then how horrible Mubarak was to cut the internet off. But then meanwhile, it's all over our news The feds just shut down 84,000 innocent websites this week. They're openly calling for an internet kill switch. They're openly saying the government needs to be able to redirect the entire internet or part of it to their messages if they see fit. I mean, we see a real move by the old line corrupt corporate media and government circling the wagons against the American people because they know the type of flare-ups we see in Egypt and Mexico and now in Wisconsin are coming to every city and town in America. What's your take on the internet kill switch and the trial balloons being sent up to sell us on getting rid of the free web, and the Pentagon saying that we're about to be hit by internet terrorists and that we need to get rid of internet freedom because of the Stuxnet, when it's admitted that Israel and the U.S. launched the Stuxnet? They've got a lot of bravado to launch the attack, admit tacitly they did it, and then call for the end of the internet freedom because of their own attacks. Are you worried about a false flag on the web?
Well, you know, I'm not technically proficient enough to be intelligently worried, but when I look at all the other things that are going on, and when I know things that not many Americans know, the Pentagon guy who runs all this stuff, his name is Keith Alexander, and he was head of NSA and still is, and now he heads up this cyber war new agency. Now, why do I single him out? Because he lied through his teeth. When a congressional member of the House Intelligence Committee, went out to see him and asked him whether they were snooping, whether they were eavesdropping on Americans, he said, "Oh no, we would never do that." Too bad for him, but the New York Times had already told the White House that James Risen's book was coming out with chapter and verse about this activity. So he lied to Congress. That's a felony, okay? Now, the congressman in question called him on the carpet and said, "Look, you're never going to get another promotion." And guess what? He gets another promotion and another agency. So you've got a bunch of very corrupt people there, and they'll do whatever the likes of Hillary Clinton and, I'm sad to say, Barack Obama tell them to do.
Ray, I know you're extremely busy today. We're going to break, and if you can't do it, that's fine. But I'd like to come back and do 5 brief minutes with you on Iran saying they're sending ships to the Med, and on just a snapshot, since we talked to you last week, on your take on what's happening in the Middle East. Can you do that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, we only got 45 seconds before the break. Tell us about Consortium News.
Well, I'm very proud to have found run by an investigative reporter, I think, is probably among the 5 best in the country. His name is Robert Perry. He had the guts to quit his profession as a writer and analyst for AP, for Newsweek, for Frontline, because they wouldn't let him up his own website. 1995.
We're going to talk more about it on the other side. It's consortiumnews.com. We're with Infowars.com. Stay with us. Ray McGovern, a former top CIA analyst to Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush, Vietnam veteran. He is our guest for 5 more minutes. Iran's state-run TV, Press TV, has confirmed they are trying to get gunboats through the Suez Canal, trying to get permission from Cairo right now. Israel calls that a war provocation. In the Jerusalem Post and AP, and says they may respond with force. So I guess everybody else is allowed to have warships in the Mediterranean, but I guess this is some type of blockade. What do you make of that and other developments? Give us a quick snapshot on that, Ray, of what's unfolding right now in North Africa and the Middle East.
Well, the short answer, Alex, is that there's a big loser, a really big loser in what's happened over the last 4 weeks. And that is Israel. For the last 32 years, they've had no reason to worry at all about their western and their southern flank. And that gave them free rein to do what they've done against Lebanon, against Gaza, against the West Bank Palestinians, and so forth. They can't depend on a secure southern-western border now because, the situation is totally new in Egypt. Now, everyone says they want a democracy in Egypt. Even the Israelis say that. But they don't really, because you know what a democracy would mean. The polls show that the Egyptians hate the Israelis. Why? Not because of their vaunted democracy, but because of their policies. And so unless Israel changes its policies toward their Palestinian brothers and sisters, the brothers and sisters of many of the Arabs in Egypt, and there are 80 million people there, of course, unless the policy changes, they stand to countenance a neighbor to the south that has strong feelings about what they do to other Palestinians, to the Palestinians in Gaza, for example. Now, how does that translate into your question? Well, you know, if the Israelis want to mount some sort of provocation to divert attention or just to show their muscle, they could easily cause a crisis in the Suez Canal or nearby on pretenses that the Iranians are actually causing the provocation. I would hope that Obama would put a bug into Netanyahu's ear and say, look, Benjamin, we're not going to come to your aid if you get involved in a war with Iran. But I have no guarantee, Alex, that Obama has enough backbone to say or to do that. And so the initiative, once again, is in the hands of those Israeli leaders. And if they see it to their advantage to stir up things in the Middle East, they're going to go ahead and do so with the full expectation that our Congress, you know, in the influence of the Israel, or with the Likud lobby is what I call it, will applaud and pass an approving measure by 420 to 10 or something like that. So the situation is dicey, and the reason it's dicey is because Israel has lost an awful lot here, and I don't know what they'll do to redress their position. But I can't visualize the Israelis sitting back and say, it's going to be really interesting to watch Wolf Blitzer on CNN and you see what's going on. No. Suleiman, the torturer, he was their man in Cairo. He doesn't seem to be in the picture anymore, but I don't know where he is. Maybe he's in Sharm el-Sheikh consulting with other Israelis. And in other words, they have plenty of influence there. They have plenty of people upon whom they can depend in Cairo. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they choose to do. Not whether they choose to do something, but what the Israelis choose to do in reaction to what's happened to them.
So definitely conflict in the Middle East is moving towards the front burner.
Well, I hope not, but it looks like it could. There's a degree of instability there now that did not exist just a short 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Ray, we're out of time. Thank God you didn't have any bones broken. Go with God. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks a lot, Alex.